I never imagined the worst day of my life would start with a simple phone call. It was late afternoon, the kind of fading light that makes the shadows in the room grow longer, stretching across the walls like silent whispers. The house was unusually quiet. My children were out with friends, and Roberto was still at work. I remember feeling a strange calm as I sat by the window, the faint hum of the city outside barely noticeable behind the glass. Then, my phone rang. The screen lit up with Roberto's name, and my heart, without thinking, eased into a small wave of comfort. He always called at this hour, but as soon as I answered, everything changed. The voice on the other end was not Roberto's. It was a woman, her tone low and steady, but carrying an urgency that sent chills down my spine. Her voice was soft, almost cautious, yet there was an undeniable firmness beneath it, as if she spoke from a place of heavy truth. "Zilda," she said, my name catching me off guard in that unfamiliar accent. "You don't know me, but I need you to hear this. Your husband has another family." The words hit me like a sharp, cold blade. For a long moment, everything around me seemed to freeze. The light from the window dimmed. The distant sounds of the city faded into silence, and my chest tightened so much I thought I might not breathe. I felt the rush of blood drain from my face, and my hands trembled against the sides of the phone. My heart, a steady, reliable beat all these years, stuttered into a confused mess of thudding panic. I wanted to say something, anything, to argue, to scream, to deny this accusation. My mind raced to convince myself it was some mistake, a cruel prank, or a voice on the line full of lies. "You're wrong," I almost whispered before I could stop myself. "You don't know what you're talking about." But the conviction in that voice was unwavering, and as much as I fought it, a dark seed of doubt rooted deep inside me. I found myself unable to hang up even as the seconds stretched painfully long. The woman continued, but her words blurred around the edges, drowned out by the sticky silence wrapping tightly around my mind. I clung to every simple sound: the slight creak of the wooden floor under my chair, the faint rustle of a curtain drifting with the breeze, and the slow, rhythmic scrape of the clock ticking on the wall, all grounding me in a reality I was too afraid to face. Roberto's secret life was no longer hidden. That phone call was the first crack in the perfect life I had built, brick by brick, with the man I loved. I sat there, motionless, my eyes fixed on the faint glow of the screen, knowing deep down that whatever lay ahead would change everything. I had no idea how deep this secret went, or how much it would shatter the world I thought I knew. For almost 30 years, I lived under the comforting illusion that my marriage was simple, steady, and true. Roberto was the kind of man you could count on, kind, hardworking, and so devoted to the life we built together that it felt unshakable. Our home was filled with laughter and memories, echoing with the voices of our two children as they grew from toddlers to teenagers. The walls held decades of shared celebrations, quiet evenings, and countless small moments that felt like the thread weaving our lives into a tapestry of trust. Of course, we had our disagreements. Every couple does. There were times when frustration hung heavy in the air like a thick fog, arguments about money, the way he sometimes ignored my advice about the kids, or the tired silence that fell between us after a long day. But none of those cracks ever seemed unfixable. We always found our way back to each other, patched those small breaks with apologies, late-night talks, and the familiarity of routines. Roberto was my rock, the steady presence through every storm, my partner through thick and thin. Every night, as I lay beside him, I would watch his face soften in sleep and feel a quiet sense of gratitude wash over me. I felt lucky, in a way most people only dream about. His hand would brush mine, and I would smile, content to simply be next to the man I trusted more than anyone in this world. The house, our life, everything was built on a foundation of faith, mine in him, his in us. But that phone call shattered all of it in an instant. The voice of that woman, mysterious and intrusive, peeled back the calm surface of my life and revealed a dark, unsettling truth lurking just underneath. The quiet certainty I clung to cracked, splintered by words I refused to believe but couldn't ignore. I wanted to push that voice away, to dismiss it as a terrible mistake, a malicious lie. Sometimes I lied to myself, convincing my heart and mind that this was some cruel joke designed to break me. I told myself Roberto wasn't capable of such betrayal, that the life we built was real, that he would never throw it all away. But deep down, there was a growing unease, a nagging doubt that crept into my every thought. I realized maybe it wasn't just the voice on the phone I was afraid to hear. Maybe I was terrified of the truth itself. The truth that the man I trusted, the man I loved, wasn't the man I thought he was. Still, I buried those fears beneath layers of denial, hoping somehow that burying them deep enough would keep them from destroying everything I held dear. But you can't hide shadows forever, not when they belong to the one you love. The quiet after that call wasn't peaceful anymore. It was charged with fear, a silent thrum of something waiting just beyond the door, ready to step into the light and tear apart the life I thought was safe. Days passed, each one heavier than the last, as doubt slithered into my mind like a cold, persistent shadow. At first, the little things seemed harmless, easily brushed aside. A missed phone call Roberto forgot to mention, a text message he quickly locked away when I entered the room, unexplained trips that stretched for hours with vague explanations. But slowly, those small, once innocent cracks grew sharper, turning into jagged signs that something was very wrong. I felt the weight of suspicion settling in my chest like a stone. Every time Roberto left the house, my heart beat faster, my hands tightening into fists at my sides. The familiar sound of the door clicking shut rang loud and final, a signal that I was left behind, struggling to hold on to the pieces I feared slipping through my fingers. The silence in the house after he left became suffocating, filled with an ache I couldn't name. I started watching him more closely, every subtle gesture, every quiet glance, every hesitation in his voice. The comfortable man I knew was slowly dissolving into a stranger I barely recognized. My mind spun with questions that I was too scared to voice out loud. Was he lying to me? Was there something hidden behind his tired eyes? The more I watched, the more I felt trapped in a nightmare that wouldn't end. Finally, I gathered what little courage I had and confronted him softly, my voice trembling. "Where are you going? Who are you talking to?" I asked, trying to keep the fear from showing. His answers were evasive, short, clipped, sometimes contradictory. The hesitation in his voice wasn't like him. It was as if he was building a wall between us, brick by brick, and I couldn't reach him anymore. Frustration and fear churned inside me, swirling into a pit of despair that I couldn't escape. Sleepless nights became routine, the darkness pressing down harder with every passing hour. The house, once a sanctuary, transformed into a prison filled with whispered doubts and shadows, stretching longer with every sunset. One night, when Roberto finally fell into a deep sleep, his breathing slow and steady beside me, I made a decision that shattered the fragile calm I held onto. I reached for his phone, my hands trembling not just from the cold, but from the storm raging inside me. The screen lit up, staring back with an accusatory glow as I unlocked it, fingers shaking as I scrolled through hundreds of messages and photos, each one a new wound. There, hidden carefully among conversations I never knew existed, were pictures of a woman I didn't recognize, tender moments frozen in time that belonged to someone else's life. More chilling were the photographs of children I'd never seen, laughing, playing, living a secret world Robert had hidden from me all these years. My breath caught, and I felt a cold wave crash over me. This wasn't just another woman. This wasn't a simple mistake or a passing affair. No, this was a whole other life, a parallel existence Roberto had built right under my nose. I sat there, phone still in hand, trembling, as the weight of betrayal crushed what was left of my faith. The man I loved was gone, replaced by a stranger with a double world. And I had finally seen the truth. When I finally confronted Roberto, the moment hung in the air like a suffocating fog, thick and heavy with the weight of everything unsaid. The room around us, the worn carpet beneath our feet, the peeling wallpaper, the dim light of the evening casting long shadows across our faces, felt smaller, tighter, as if it were closing in to witness what was about to unfold. I remember gripping the edge of the kitchen table so tightly that my knuckles turned white, my nails digging into the wood like a lifeline to hold myself together. Roberto sat across from me, his eyes flickering with a mix of guilt, shame, and exhaustion. The silence stretched between us, broken only by the soft ticking of the clock on the wall and the distant hum of the street outside. Then, With a hesitation that seemed to last forever, he finally spoke, and the truth poured out of him like a flood breaking through a dam. Yes, he admitted quietly, voice cracking under the weight of his confession. There is another family. His words hung in the air, shocking in their bluntness. He told me about the other woman, someone I had never even suspected existed, a woman he claimed he loved, and the children, 2 children he had with her. Details I wanted to reject, but couldn't deny. The sheer scope of his betrayal was more than I could process. He said he never meant for me to find out, told me he was torn between us. Torn. That word echoed endlessly in my head, a chilling admission wrapped in cowardice. I could only manage to stare at him, heart pounding with disbelief and outrage. The memories we shared, the vacations, the anniversaries, the quiet evenings by the fire, were they all just lies? Was every promise we ever made just smoke and mirrors? When I asked him plainly, why? His answer was almost absurd in its simplicity. I was lonely. Those 2 words struck me deeper than any scream or accusation ever could. Loneliness. How could it be so easy to justify the devastation he'd caused? The raw ache of his betrayal settled into a cold numbness that spread through every fiber of my being. We argued, voices rising and falling in jagged waves of anger and sorrow. At times, the room shook with rage and accusations. At others, we sat in crushing silence, the quiet almost worse than the fights. I looked at Roberto and saw a man I thought I knew, now fractured and distant, a stranger trapped in the shell of the person I once loved. In that moment, the terrifying reality became clear. The man I loved had been living a double life. I was blind to it, too trusting, too hopeful to see the cracks beneath the surface. There was no easy fix, no explanation that could heal what had been broken. Just the cold, hard truth, devastating and undeniable. I realized then that everything I had built my life upon was unraveling. There was no going back to who we were before this, the past, the memories, the love. I didn't know what any of it meant anymore. All that remained was the harsh certainty of his betrayal and the long, painful road ahead to find out who I was without him. In the aftermath, I found myself standing in the wreckage of a life I once believed was unbreakable. The house felt emptier somehow, the rooms echoing with memories that now seemed tainted by deception. The sunlight filtering through the curtains no longer brought warmth. Instead, it cast long shadows that stretched like silent reminders of everything lost. I wandered through those spaces, haunted by the quiet whispers of what could have been, trying to piece together the fragments of a shattered trust. The pain, sharp and relentless, pressed down on me like a weight I couldn't escape. There were nights when tears soaked my pillow, when the ache in my chest was so raw I felt breathless. The betrayal gnawed at me from the inside, a slow and cruel erosion of my sense of self. But through that unbearable hurt, an unexpected strength began to emerge, a fierce, stubborn will to survive that I hadn't known I possessed. I learned that love, trust, and honesty are fragile, delicate threads that can unravel in an instant. Once broken, they require more than time to heal. They demand courage, patience, and an unflinching commitment to face the darkest parts of yourself. I realized that forgiveness, whether for others or myself, was not a simple act, but a difficult journey, a slow rebuilding of faith, brick by brick. I don't know where Roberto is now. I don't know if he wakes up every day haunted by the same ghosts that haunt me, or if he ever truly grasped the magnitude of what he tore apart. But what I do know is that I deserve better than the shadow of a half-life lived in lies. I deserve truth, respect, and a life where I can breathe freely again, unburdened by secrets that suffocated my soul. This story is not just about betrayal. It is about survival. The kind of survival that forces you to cast off illusions and face brutal realities, but also teaches you to find light in the darkest of places. To anyone who finds themselves living beneath a cloud of deceit, please know this: you are not alone. There is a way through the pain, a path to reclaiming your life. And one day, though it may seem impossible now, you will find peace. Peace in the quiet moments when your heart no longer feels so heavy. Peace in the knowledge that you survived the unbearable. Peace in the promise of a future rebuilt not on lies, but on the fierce, unyielding truth of who you are.